My name is Sonia Brady. I'm 36 years old. For 18 years, my parents introduced my sister as our doctor, the pride of the family. And every single time they introduced me as the other one. Not Sonia, not our daughter, just the other one. As if I was an afterthought. As if I was the mistake that came with the golden child. Last month on January 20th, 2026, I sat in a law office overlooking Charleston Harbor while the lawyer began reading my grandmother's will. The moment he spoke 5 words, my mother let out a scream that echoed off the windows. My father knocked his chair over trying to stand. He was already on the phone with his own attorney before the lawyer even finished the sentence. Then the lawyer opened a thick sealed envelope. 12 pages. My grandmother's handwriting. My father slowly sat back down, covered his face with both hands, and whispered to my mother the 3 words none of us would ever forget. She found out. She found out what they had done to me for 18 years. She found out everything. And she had spent her final years making sure the truth would finally be heard in the loudest way possible. This is what happened when the receipts finally came home to roost. If this story resonates with you, please like and subscribe and drop your city in the comments along with the label your family gave you. I read every single one. Now, let me take you back to the day everything started. Growing up in Charleston, there were 2 versions of our family story. In one version, my parents had 2 daughters, Dr. Elizabeth Brady Beth, the pediatric oncologist at MUSC, the one who saved children's lives, the one they talked about at church fundraisers, at country club dinners, at every single family gathering. And then there was me. I remember the exact phrasing. It never changed. This is Beth, our daughter. She's a pediatric oncologist at MUSC. Pause. Smile. Pride radiating from every word. Then they gesture vaguely in my direction. And this is Sonia. She works with animals. Not our other daughter. Not a veterinarian. Not even my full name half the time. Just Sonia. The other one. I own a veterinary practice. Low Country Animal Hospital, 1,200 square feet on the edge of downtown Charleston. 3 employees. We do good work. We help families who can't afford the big emergency clinics. Last year, we brought in $380,000 in revenue. But at family dinners, my mother would say things like, BTH performed a tumor resection on a 6-year-old this week. Save his life. Then she turned to me, how's the dog grooming business, sweetie? I'd smile. I always smiled. I'm a veterinarian, Mom. I own the practice. Right. That's nice, dear. Beth was a real doctor. I was the other one. It was the family script written before I ever had a chance to audition. The worst part, I'd learned to play along, to laugh it off, to make it easier for everyone else. At the MUSC annual gala in April 2024, I watched my father introduce Beth to a hospital donor at table 16. This is our daughter, Dr. Brady, pediatric oncology. The donor was impressed. Of course he was. Then my father gestured to me, and this is Sonia. She's the other one. She's a vet. Not even our other daughter. Just the other one. I smiled, shook the donor's hand, made small talk about his golden retriever's hip dysplasia. I didn't know then that my grandmother was sitting at table 12 feet away, listening to every word. If you've ever been called the other one in your own family, drop your city in the comments. I read every single one. The thing about being the other one is that you learn not to ask for things. I didn't ask why Beth got the bigger bedroom growing up. I didn't ask why her college graduation party had 100 guests and mine had 12. I didn't ask why they flew to Boston for her medical school white coat ceremony but couldn't make it to my vet school graduation because Dad had a golf tournament. You just accept it. You build your life around the absence of their attention. And you definitely don't ask about money. When I was 18, March 15th, 2008, my birthday, my grandmother Eleanor pulled me into her garden behind the Charleston single house on Trad Street. The wisteria was blooming. Purple clusters everywhere. The smell was overwhelming in the best way. She held both my hands. Sonia, I'm setting up something for you. A custodial account, UTMA, Uniform Transfer to Minors Act. I'm putting in $250,000. I stared at her. I was 18. I'd never seen that much money in my life. Your parents will be the custodians until you're 21, she continued. That's standard. They'll help manage it, but when you turn 21, it all transfers to you. With growth by then, it should be close to $500,000 for vet school, for your practice, for whatever dream you choose. She squeezed my hands tighter. Your parents love Beth differently than they love you. I've seen it my whole life. This ensures your future isn't determined by their favoritism. I remember the exact words she said next. Promise me you'll use it for something that makes you happy, not something that makes them proud. I promised. She opened the account that afternoon. Bank of America, account number 4521-88361902. Custodians, Mr. and Mrs. Brady. Beneficiary, transfer age 21, $250,000. My future, my safety net. My proof that someone saw me. That night at my birthday dinner, my parents brought out paperwork. Grandma set up that custodial account today, my mother said, sliding papers across the table. Very generous. There's just some paperwork the bank needs. Standard stuff for when custodianship transfers. My father pointed to signature lines. Don't bother reading all the legal jargon. It's just authorizing us to continue helping with educational expenses after you turn 21 for vet school. Makes it easier for everyone. I looked at the document, 6 pages, dense legal language. I thought the account becomes mine at 21. It does, Dad said. This just lets us help coordinate withdrawals for school expenses. Simpler than you having to manage it yourself while studying. I signed all 6 pages. My grandmother watched from across the table. She didn't ask what the papers were. She assumed it was the bank paperwork she'd set up that morning. Dad smiled and slid the documents back into his briefcase. All set now. Let's have cake. I didn't know then what I'd actually signed. The document was called an Educational Expense Authorization Agreement. It amended the standard UTMA custodian termination. It granted my parents ongoing authorization to withdraw funds for family educational expenses even after I turned 21. There was a clause for subsection C. Family educational investments including but not limited to degree programs, certification courses, and professional development for any immediate family member shall be considered beneficial to all family members and therefore eligible expenditures. It was legally sophisticated. They could claim Beth's medical education created a family asset that benefited me indirectly. Without that document, their access would have ended automatically when I turned 21 in March 2011. With it, they had a key to my future, and I'd handed it to them myself. Beth started college in fall 2008. College of Charleston, then Medical University of South Carolina. For years of undergrad. Tuition $23,560 per year. In-state rates total $94,240. My parents paid every penny. Beth never took out a single loan. I remember her mentioning it casually over Thanksgiving dinner in 2010. I'm so lucky Mom and Dad saved for our education. I looked up from my mashed potatoes. They did? Yeah. They told me they set aside money years ago. They said, you have yours too. I did have mine. I just didn't know they were spending it on her. I started vet school in 2009. For years. Tuition, books, living expenses. Total cost $180,000. I took out student loans for every penny of it. Worked 2 part-time jobs, night shifts at the emergency vet clinic on Savannah Highway, weekends at the pet supply store on King Street. I lived in a shared apartment with 3 roommates, drove a 1998 Corolla that broke down every other month. I never asked my parents for help. I never even mentioned the trust fund my grandmother had set up. I wanted to prove I could do it myself. At Thanksgiving 2011, I was in my 3rd year of vet school. I finally asked, my loans are at $86,000. Can I access some of the trust fund Grandma set up? My father didn't even look up from his plate. That money needs to keep growing, Sonia. You're managing fine. Build character. Character. That's what he called it. While they were forging my name on withdrawal forms for Beth's medical school apartment deposit. Beth started medical school in 2012. For years at MUSC. Tuition $60,000 per year. Total $240,000. They paid it all. Every semester. Every housing payment. Every meal plan. Beth lived in a nice apartment near the hospital, studied without worrying about money, never worked a single shift while in school. At Christmas 2014, my mother said, Beth is top of her class. We're so proud. We made sure she could focus on studying without financial stress. She looked at me. You understand, right? Medical school is harder than your program was. I understood. I was the other one. What I didn't understand was that every time they said our doctor, they meant it literally. She was built with my money. Beth's residency started in 2016. Pediatric oncology at MUSC. 3 years. Resident salary is barely livable. My parents helped out. They paid her rent. $2,100 a month for 3 years. That's $75,600. In 2017, they bought her a car, a Honda Accord, $28,000. Beth needs reliable transportation, my father said at Thanksgiving that year. Residence salary is nothing. I driven that 1998 Corolla through all of vet school. I drove a 20-year-old car through vet school, I said quietly. My father shrugged. You chose an easier path, different needs. By 2019, the UTMA account my grandmother had set up, the account that should have been worth close to $1 million, had exactly $3,247 in it. Beth's education from 2008 to 2019 cost my parents exactly zero out of pocket because they'd spent $886,800 of mine. I didn't know any of this. I was too busy paying $2,100 a month on my student loans every month for 8 years. I paid off the last of those loans in 20121, $180,000 plus interest, while my inheritance sat in an account I didn't even know I could access. I stopped asking about the trust fund after that conversation in 2011. I was busy building a life they'd never funded. I didn't know they were busy spending mine. On March 12, 2019, my grandmother Eleanor had her annual financial review. She was 79 years old, meeting with her advisor at Raymond and Associates, Financial Planning Meeting Room B230 in the afternoon. She asked about my UTMA account. Casual question, just checking on her granddaughter's future. The advisor, Philip Raymond, pulled up the records. There was a long silence. Mrs. Brady, the UTMA custodial account, transferred to Sonia's full control when she turned 21 in March 2011. That's standard. He paused. But the withdrawals, they didn't stop. My grandmother leaned forward. What do you mean they didn't stop? The account currently shows a balance of $3,247.18. She went very still. That's impossible. It should be close to $1 million by now. He turned his computer screen toward her. Since 2011, there have been 89 withdrawals totaling $847,000, all authorized as educational expenses for family benefit, all bearing Sonia's signature on the authorization forms. My grandmother asked to see the withdrawal slips. He printed them, every one of them. 89 withdrawals. March 2011 through January 2019. Every signature said Sonia Brady. Every single one was forged. My grandmother knew immediately. She'd watched me sign my name my entire life. But there was something else. I'd never known the account existed after I turned 21. They'd never told me it had transferred to my control. They just kept taking. Philip Raymond ran projections for her. $250,000 invested in March 2008. Moderate portfolio allocation. 60% equities. 40% bonds. Tracking the market. The 2009 to 2019 bull market was generous. Average annual return approximately 9.2%. By March 2019, that account should have been worth $890,000 to $920,000, depending on exact allocation. $890,000, almost $1 million gone. My grandmother sat in that conference room for a long time after the advisor left. Then she drove home to the house on Trad Street. She went into her garden, the same garden where she told me about the account 11 years earlier. She sat on the bench under the wisteria, and she cried. Later, I know this because she wrote it in her letter. She said she wept not just for the theft. She wept for every time they'd called me the other one while spending my future on Beth. She could have confronted them that day, screamed, demanded answers. But my grandmother was 79 years old and fighting ovarian cancer. She knew confrontation would mean denial, legal battles with no proof, family fracture. While she watched, she chose the long game. On March 18, 2019, she called her personal attorney, Margaret Whitmore, Rutledge and Whitmore, a different firm than the family lawyer. She explained everything. Margaret recommended a private investigator. My grandmother hired one the next day, Davidson Investigative Services. $15,000 retainer. Her instructions were simple. I don't care how long it takes. I don't care how much it costs. I want every withdrawal documented, every signature analyzed, every dollar accounted for. And I want it done quietly. She never told me. She was 79 years old, already fighting the cancer that would take her 6 years later. But she made a choice. She would get me justice, even if she couldn't give me back the years. The investigation took 6 years, not because it was complicated. It took 6 years because my grandmother was dying and because she was strategic. The private investigator obtained all the bank records. My grandmother, as the original account grantor, had legal access. They documented every withdrawal, dates, amounts, forged signatures. They created a timeline. Every withdrawal matched perfectly with Beth's educational milestones. August 2008, $12,400. Beth's fall semester tuition. January 2009, $12,400. Spring semester, it went on and on and on. 132 transactions over 11 years. But there was something even more damning. The investigators subpoenaed my parents' emails through a legal process with my grandmother's attorney. They found 23 emails between my mother and father. Subject lines: tuition payment, SS fund, family educational expenses. The worst one was dated July 14th, 2011. 11:34 p.m. My father to my mother. Used the authorization again for Beth's fall tuition. $24,500. S won't notice. She never checks the account. E set it up, but it's family money. We're just redirecting to the child who actually used the education. They'd written it down. They'd actually written down their plan to rob me in emails. They thought no one would ever see. Meanwhile, my grandmother's cancer progressed. Stage 2 ovarian cancer in March 2019, chemotherapy through the summer. Remission in November 2020. Recurrence in January 2023. Stage 4. It had spread to her lungs, her liver, her bones. Final prognosis in February 2025, 6 to 12 months. The investigation paused during her harsh chemo cycles, June through November 2019, February through May 2023. But she kept going because she'd done the math. The last fraudulent withdrawal had been January 15th, 2019, $12,400 for Beth's final residency housing payment. Under South Carolina law, that started the statute of limitations clock for civil fraud, 3 years from discovery or from the last wrongful act, whichever is later. She discovered the theft in March 2019. That gave her until March 2022 for civil claims. But she wasn't focused on civil claims. She was building a criminal case. Felony theft and forgery in South Carolina have a 5-year statute from the date of the offense. The last withdrawal was January 2019. That gave her until January 2024 for criminal prosecution. She had time, so she used it. She told her attorney, Margaret Whitmore, "Keep digging. I need everything documented before I run out of time." But Margaret told me later, after everything, that my grandmother had another reason for waiting. She was strategic. Margaret said she knew if she confronted them too soon, they'd hide evidence, delete emails, claim innocence. But if she waited, gathered everything, and made her death the trigger, they'd have nowhere to hide. The evidence would outlive them all. In August 2025, the private investigator delivered the final report. 127 pages, every transaction, every forged signature, every email, timeline visualization, financial damage calculation, legal opinion on criminal exposure, and a statute of limitations analysis. The executive summary was devastating. Total misappropriated funds: $886,800 from UTMA account that transferred to beneficiary control March 2011. Withdrawals March 2011 through January 2019. 89 transactions, all unauthorized, all with forged beneficiary signatures. Estimated value had funds remained invested, $923,000. Conservative recovery demand $890,000 principal plus $210,000 interest equals $1.1 million. The criminal exposure section was even worse for my parents. Felony theft, forgery, financial fraud. Each forged signature was a separate felony offense. 89 forgeries spanning 2011 to 2019. 5-year statute of limitations from each offense date. Some had expired by August 2025, but the more recent ones, 2020 and later, working backward, were still prosecutable, and there was a note about fraudulent concealment. My parents had actively hidden the fraud, told me the account was growing, deleted incriminating emails, prevented discovery for years. Under South Carolina law, fraudulent concealment can extend the statute of limitations. The civil claims might still be viable. The criminal ones definitely were. My grandmother read the report twice. She understood. The civil window had technically closed, but the criminal window was still open. Barely, but enough. She called Margaret and said, "Draft the will. All of it goes to Sonia, and make sure they know if they fight it, the criminal evidence goes to the DA. They'll have to choose between money and prison." In June 2025, 3 months before she died, my grandmother signed the final will. Margaret asked if she was certain. My grandmother said, I've never been more certain of anything in my life. She also wrote a letter, 12 pages by hand. Blue ink. Her instructions to Margaret were explicit. The letter must be read aloud at the family meeting. No exceptions. She sealed it herself. The envelope was marked, "To be read aloud. No exceptions." Witnessed by Margaret Whitmore and the notary public. My grandmother died on September 15th, 2025, 4:22 in the morning. At home, hospice care. I was at her bedside, holding her hand. Her last words to me were strange at the time. "Sonia, I made sure you'll have what you deserve. Promise me you'll be strong." "I promise, Grandma." She squeezed my hand. "They'll be angry, but you'll understand why." Her voice was barely a whisper. "I love you. You were never the other one." She died 4 minutes later. I didn't understand what she meant. I thought it was morphine confusion. I kissed her forehead and whispered, "I love you, too." I had no idea what was coming. The funeral was on September 19th, St. Philip's Episcopal Church, 200 people. It was beautiful, traditional Southern. Beth delivered the eulogy. "Grandma Eleanor was the heart of this family," she said, voice breaking. "She taught us about education, perseverance, and unconditional love. She was so proud of what we'd become." My parents sat in the front row, tissues in hand, nodding, grieving parents, loving son and daughter-in-law. Everyone assumed this estate would be divided fairly, probably split between Beth and me, maybe some gifts to the church, to other relatives. No one suspected anything unusual. 2 weeks later, Margaret Whitmore called me. October 2nd, 3:15 in the afternoon. "Miss Brady, this is Margaret Whitmore from Rutledge and Whitmore. I'm handling your grandmother's estate. Probate has been filed and is proceeding normally. That process takes months. However, Mrs. Brady left very specific instructions that I convene an informal family meeting before the formal estate settlement. She wanted certain information shared with the family together in person." "What kind of information?" I asked. "Her testamentary intentions and some background material she wanted the family to understand. It's not a formal probate proceeding. You won't receive any assets at this meeting, but she was very clear that this meeting happened exactly as she specified." There was a pause. "I've scheduled it for Monday, January 20th, 10 a.m. at our King Street office. Will my family be there?" "Yes. Your parents, your sister, and several other relatives have been notified. Mrs. Brady requested everyone attend in person." Another pause. "Longer this time. I'd recommend you arrive a few minutes early, Miss Brady." I hung up the phone. January 20th. An informal meeting before probate closed. That meant Grandma had planned something that couldn't wait for the formal legal process, something she wanted them to hear while the shock was fresh. I had no idea that meeting would split my family in half. January 20th, 2026, 10:03 a.m. Rutledge and Whitmore, 156, King Street, Suite 400, Conference Room 4B. The room had a mahogany table that seated 12 floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Charleston Harbor. You could see Fort Sumter in the distance. 8 of us were there. My parents, Beth, Uncle Ross, Aunt Jean, Aunt Patricia, 2 attorneys, Margaret Whitmore and her junior partner, Carson Hughes, and a notary public, Elizabeth Brennan. There was a picture of water on the table, manila folders in front of Margaret labeled Brady Estate Confidential. My mother smiled nervously at me as I sat down. "Do you know what this is about?" The attorney was so cryptic on the phone. She said, "Grandma left specific instructions." Beth leaned over. "Probate takes months, right? Why meet now?" Before I could answer, Margaret entered and closed the door. "Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming." She sat at the head of the table. "Before we begin, I want to clarify what this meeting is and isn't. This is not a formal probate proceeding. Estate probate is ongoing and will take several more months to complete. No assets will be distributed today." She looked around the table. "However, Mrs. Eleanor Brady left explicit instructions in her will that I convene this informal meeting to share her testamentary intentions with the family and certain information she wanted you all to hear together in person before the estate settles." She opened the top folder. "What I'm about to share is legally binding, witnessed, and notarized, but this is about understanding her wishes, not executing them yet." My father leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled, confident. My mother smiled slightly, nervous, but assuming this was standard family business. They thought this was about logistics, timelines, maybe small bequests. They had no idea those manila folders held 17 years of evidence. Margaret began reading. Mrs. Brady's estate is valued at approximately $2.6 million. This consists of the Charleston single house at 84 Trad Street, currently appraised at $1.9 million. The beach house on Kiowa Island, appraised at $520,000, and liquid assets of approximately $180,000 in various accounts. Everyone leaned forward. My father's smile widened just slightly. If it was split between Beth and me, that was over $1 million each. Maybe more to Beth. She was the doctor after all. Margaret continued. Smaller bequests first. $25,000 to St. Philip's Episcopal Church. $10,000 each to Ross Brady, Jean Morrison, and Patricia Caldwell. The aunts and uncle nodded, grateful. Then Margaret looked directly at me. Mrs. Brady's testamentary intentions for the remainder of the estate are as follows. She paused. Quote, I leave the entirety of my remaining estate to my granddaughter, Sonia Marie Brady. The room went completely silent. Then my mother gasped. What? Margaret kept reading. Quote, everything goes to the other one. My mother stood up so fast her chair fell backward. That's not. There must be a mistake. Mother would never. My father was already on his phone dialing. His hands were shaking. I need you at Rutledge and Whitmore immediately, he said into the phone. My mother's will. It's insane. We're contesting. Beth was staring at me. Wait, what? Sonia gets everything. Margaret's voice cut through the chaos. Mr. Brady, I'd recommend you hear the letter before you make that call. My father looked up. What letter? Your mother left a handwritten letter explaining her decision. 12 pages. She requested it be read aloud at this meeting. She held up a thick sealed envelope. Would you like to stay and hear it, or would you prefer to leave and contest blind? My father ended his call mid-sentence. He sat down slowly, stared at that envelope like it was a bomb. My mother was crying, and Margaret Whitmore broke the seal. Margaret's voice was steady, professional, but there was something underneath. Respect maybe for my grandmother's thoroughness. She began reading to my family. By now you know I left everything to Sonia. This letter explains why. And before you accuse me of silly, know that I was examined by 2 independent physicians in May 2025. Both certified my complete mental competence. Those evaluations are attached. She looked up. Dr. Vernon Hayes and Dr. Sarah Blackburn. Both confirmed testament capacity. My father's face was turning gray. Margaret continued reading. I am writing this in sound mind and broken heart. What I discovered about how you treated Sonia, how you stole from her, has haunted my final years. But it also gave me purpose. I spent 6 years building a case, and now you'll hear the truth. My mother whispered, "Oh God." Margaret turned the page. On March 12th, 2019, I learned you'd stolen Sonia's entire future. $886,800, forged her signature 132 times over 11 years. Funded Beth's education, every penny of it, with Sonia's trust fund. Beth's face went white. What? While Sonia worked night shifts and took out $180,000 in loans, you were spending her inheritance on the child you loved more. The room was completely silent except for Margaret's voice. I hired a private investigator, Davidson Investigative Services, for 6 years. They documented everything. Every forged signature, every dollar you stole, every email where you discussed managing Sonia's fund for family priorities. My father had stopped moving entirely. Margaret read an email excerpt. July 14th, 2011. Quote, use the authorization again for Beth's fall tuition. $24,500. S won't notice. She never checks the account. Beth made a sound, something between a gasp and a sob. Margaret kept reading. The report is 127 pages. I have copies. My attorney has copies. And if you contest this will, those copies go to the Charleston County District Attorney's office. Now my father understood. His face wasn't gray anymore. It was white. Because this wasn't just about the inheritance. It was about prison. Margaret turned another page. This section was more personal. My grandmother's voice through the lawyer's reading. I watched you introduce them again and again. This is our doctor, said with such pride. This is Sonia, said with such nothing. At my 80th birthday party, someone asked who Sonia was. Your wife said, "Oh, that's the other one. She's a vet." Not even our other daughter. The other one. Like she was optional. I felt tears on my face. I hadn't known my grandmother had heard that. I thought I was the only one who felt erased. But she'd been watching, cataloging every slight, building a case not just of theft, but of eraser. Margaret continued reading the investigation details. Bank statements spanning 2008 to 2019. 89 forged signatures with forensic analysis. Email correspondence. Timeline matching every withdrawal to Beth's educational expenses. You can contest this will, Margaret. But then this evidence goes public and possibly to the district attorney. She turned to the final pages. My grandmother's voice changed here, became softer, more direct. Sonia, my darling girl, you were never the other one. You were my first thought every morning during these last years. Watching you build a life they never funded, a practice they never respected, a strength they never acknowledged. That was my pride. My vision blurred. This estate is yours, not as charity, as restitution. What they stole from you is money. What I'm giving back to you is proof that someone saw, someone knew, someone loved you exactly as you were. Margaret read the last line. Sonia, you were never the other one. You were always my first choice. And now, finally, you'll have proof. She closed the letter. No one moved. My father's face was gray. My mother was crying. Beth was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. And I sat there completely still, finally understanding. Grandma had seen everything. The next 3 weeks were chaos. Within 6 hours of the meeting, my parents started calling. The first text came at 6:15 p.m. Dad, we need to talk. This is a family matter. Don't let your grandmother's bitterness destroy us. Mom, 9:22 p.m. How can you do this to your sister? She had no idea where the money came from. Dad, next morning, 7:03 a.m. Our attorney says we have grounds to contest. Don't make us do this publicly. I blocked them after the 47th message. 47 attempts to control the narrative. Not once did they say, we're sorry we stole from you. Beth called separately. She left 4 voicemails. The first one, January 21st, Sonia, it's me. I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know. They told me it was their savings. I never questioned it. I never owe God. Sonia, you had student loans and I had everything paid, and I didn't even think to ask why. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to make this right. Call me, please. I listened to all 4 voicemails. I believed her. She didn't know, but that almost made it worse. She'd been loved so completely. She never had to question where the money came from. That's what golden child means. You don't even see the theft. On January 25th, my parents' attorneys sent a formal letter, James Morrison, and Caldwell. We represent Mr. and Mrs. Brady regarding the estate of Eleanor Brady. Our clients intend to file contest on grounds that Mrs. Eleanor Brady was subjected to undue influence during her final years and that the testamentary disposition is unconscionable. Furthermore, any allegations of financial impropriety by our clients are time-barred and without merit. Margaret responded 2 days later. Her letter was 8 pages long. I'll summarize. Point 1. Testament capacity. 2 independent physicians certified Grandma's mental competence in May 2025. Contest on competency grounds would fail. Point 2. Undue influence. Grandma's plan was developed independently starting in 2019, 6 years before her death. She personally directed the investigation. I didn't even know about it until January 20th. Point 3. Statute of limitations. This section was devastating. Your client's last unauthorized withdrawal, January 15th, 2019. South Carolina Civil Fraud Statute, 3 years from discovery or last wrongful act. Discovery by Eleanor Brady, March 12th, 2019. Civil statute expired, March 12th, 2022. But then came the hammer. However, SC fraudulent concealment doctrine extends limitations period when defendant actively conceals fraud. Evidence shows your clients told Sonia Brady the account was growing, deleted incriminating emails, and prevented discovery until Eleanor Brady's financial review. Fraudulent concealment may revive civil claims. And then the real threat, more critically, criminal statutes for felony theft and forgery, 5 to 10 years from date of offense. 89 forged signatures spanning 2011 to 2019 equals 89 separate felony counts. Prosecutable offenses from 2015 forward remain well within criminal statute as of January 2026. Each forged signature equals up to 10 years imprisonment. Margaret attached a 12-page executive summary of the private investigator's report. 89 forged signatures with forensic analysis. 23 emails between my parents. Bank statements showing $886,800 in unauthorized withdrawals. The timeline matching everything to Beth's education. She ended with a recommendation. Any contest of this will necessitates full disclosure of evidence in probate court, which becomes public record. Additionally, contest will trigger referral of evidence to Charleston County District Attorney's Office for criminal prosecution evaluation. 3 days later, their attorney called Margaret. The call lasted 11 minutes. 2 days after that, he called again. 7 minutes. He never filed the contest because he'd done the math. Even if the civil statute had expired, the criminal statute hadn't. And that was all the leverage we needed. On February 3rd, I made a decision. I wanted to look at them. I wanted them to see my face when they realized I knew everything, and I wanted it documented. I called Margaret. I want a face-to-face meeting with witnesses, legal documentation. I want them to choose, pay restitution, or face criminal charges. Margaret was quiet for a moment. I can arrange that dinner at their home. We arrived during the meal with the evidence package and legal demand letter. They can accept the terms or we proceed to the DA's office. We set the date for February 8th, Saturday, 6 p.m. I sent one text to my father. Family dinner, February 8th, 6 p.m. Your house. Come alone. Bring mom. Beth can come if she wants the truth. He replied in 4 minutes. We'll be there. February 8th, 2026. 6 p.m. My parents' house on Sycamore Street. I hadn't been there since Christmas 2024. My mother had cooked shrimp and grits trying to create normally. Beth was already there when I arrived. Nervous, quiet. I made your favorite, Mom said. Too bright, too desperate. Thank you. We sat down, the four of us. Dad cleared his throat. So, we should talk about this situation rationally like adults. We will. I said, let's eat first. I ate slowly. Let them talk. Let them try to explain how Grandma was confused and how we could work this out as a family. I was waiting for 6:45. At exactly 6:47 p.m., the doorbell rang. My father assumed it was someone for me. He opened the door. Margaret Whitmore, Carson Hughes, her junior partner, and Elizabeth Brennan, notary public. They were carrying briefcases and a large document box. My father's face drained of color. Mr. and Mrs. Brady, Margaret said. I'm Margaret Whitmore representing Sonia Brady and the estate of Eleanor Brady. This is Mr. Hughes and Miss Brennan. We're here to present evidence and a legal demand. May we come in? What is this? Dad asked. I stood up. This is the conversation we're going to have rationally like adults. They came inside. Margaret set the document box on the dining room table. She opened it, and she started laying out documents. One 27-page investigative report. Bank statements 18 years worth. Forged signature comparisons. Email printouts. Timeline visualization on a poster board. Each piece labeled, dated, referenced. It covered the entire dining room table. Margaret's voice was completely calm, professional. Exhibit A, Bank of America Trust Account Statements, 2008 through 2025. Note the withdrawals. 32 transactions totaling $886,800. She laid out signature comparison sheets. Exhibit B, Forensic Signature Analysis by Dr. Nathan Aldrich. Conclusion, 0 authentic signatures, all forgeries. She laid out the emails. Exhibit C, email correspondence between Mr. and Mrs. Brady discussing managing Sonia's fund for family priorities. Beth was reading the emails. Her hands were shaking. She looked at our parents. You knew, she whispered. You knew you were stealing from her. My mother started crying. My father tried to argue. That trust was family money. My mother set it up, but it was meant for family educational needs. Margaret cut him off. The trust document, page 3, paragraph 7. This UTMA custodial account is established solely for the benefit of Sonia Marie Brady. Custodian authority terminates when beneficiary reaches age 21. No other party may access, withdraw, or direct funds thereafter. She looked at him. Would you like me to read the entire document aloud? Silence. Your email. July 14th, 2011. S. Won't notice. She never checks the account. That doesn't sound like someone managing family money. That sounds like someone stealing. My father had no response. Carson Hughes stepped forward with a folder. This is a formal demand for restitution. He handed the letter to my father. Principal $890,000 representing the trust fund value had it remained invested at conservative returns. Interest and damages $210,000. Total $1.1 million. He let that sink in. You have 20 days from today, February 8th, 2026, to remit payment in full. Payment deadline, February 28th, 2026. He showed my father the next page. Failure to comply will result in referral to the Charleston County District Attorney's Office for criminal prosecution. Breach of trust, forgery, and embezzlement are felonies in South Carolina. Each count carries up to 10 years imprisonment. My father looked at the number. $1.1 million or prison. Beth spoke. Her voice was shaking. I didn't know. She was crying now, looking at the forged signatures. I swear to God, Sonia, I didn't know any of this. She turned to her parents. You told me you'd saved for my education. You told me it was money you'd set aside for years. I never questioned it because parents save for their kids' college. That's normal. Her voice broke. I asked once junior year of college. I asked Dad why Sonia didn't apply to medical school like me. He said you preferred animals. Always had that you'd chosen vet school because it suited you better. I believed him. She looked at me. I never knew you had student loans until today. I never knew Grandma had set up money for you. You never complained. You never said you were struggling. You smiled. You always smiled. She turned back to our parents. Her voice was harder now. I would have taken the loans. I would have worked through med school like half my classmates did. I never asked you to do this. And I sure as hell never asked you to steal from my sister to do it. She looked at me again. Let me pay you. My salary. I make $245,000 a year. This isn't your debt, Beth. I said quietly. You didn't know. You didn't choose this. But I benefited. Every tuition payment, every rent check, you were their golden child. They made sure you never had to question where anything came from. That's what golden children don't understand. You're so loved, you can't even see the theft. I looked at my parents. This is their debt, not yours. My mother tried one last time. We're your parents, Sonia. We fed you, clothed you, raised you. I cut her off. You gave me a roof and called it love. You gave Beth a future and called it fairness. You gave me a name, the other one, and called it family. And then you stole the one thing Grandma tried to give me that was actually mine. I paused. You don't get credit for doing the bare minimum while stealing the maximum. My mother opened her mouth, closed it. For once, she had nothing to say. I stood up. You have 20 days. Pay it or the DA gets everything. Either way, we're done. No birthdays, no Christmas, no let's work through this. You made your choice every time you signed my name to those withdrawals. I'm making mine now. My father looked at the demand letter. $1.1 million or criminal charges. My mother was shaking. Beth was crying. I pushed my chair in. You have until February 28th. After that, this goes to the DA's office. I walked out. Margaret, Carson, and Elizabeth followed. I never entered that house again. February 25th, 2026, 3:47 p.m. My phone rang. Margaret Sonia, the wire came through full amount. $1.1 million received at 3:47 this afternoon. 3 days before the deadline. Did they send anything with the payment? A letter, a note, just the wire transfer and a one-line email from their attorney. Payment remitted in full. Matter considered closed. I was quiet for a long time. Margaret, I said, how did they raise the money that fast? I did some checking through public records. They liquidated substantial assets, approximately $420,000 from retirement accounts, $380,000 from a home equity line of credit, and the remainder from investment portfolio sales. She paused. The retirement withdrawal triggered significant penalties, probably a 20% early withdrawal penalty plus income taxes. They'll lose close to $100,000 to penalties and taxes alone. The home equity loan is at 8.5% interest on $380,000. That's roughly $33,000 annually just in interest. Another pause. And Charleston is a small town for people in their social circle. This kind of rapid asset liquidation gets noticed.
People talk good, I said.
They paid 3 days before the deadline. They paid $1.1 million, but they couldn't write 3 words.
We're sorry.
That told me everything I needed to know. They'd rather lose their retirement, mortgage their house, and destroy their financial future than admit they were wrong. That's not regret. That's self-preservation. And it's exactly why I was done. Beth reached out every week after that. Text short, tentative.
I'm thinking about you. Can we talk?
I need to understand what happened. On February 18th, I agreed to meet her for coffee. Harkin Coffee on Spring Street. 2:00 p.m. It was awkward. We sat across from each other with our lattes, and neither of us knew how to start. Finally, Beth said, I keep thinking about all the times I didn't ask why you had loans and I didn't. I should have asked. You were 20 years old. I said, they told you it was savings. You believe them because children believe their parents. I want to make this right somehow. You can't, but maybe we can start from here, from the truth. We met again on February 26th, same coffee shop. It's still awkward. We're not close. Maybe we never will be again, but we're trying. And that's more than I can say for the people who raised us. I used the money the way Grandma wanted. In late February, I announced plans to expand Low Country Animal Hospital. 2 new locations, North Charleston and Mount Pleasant. Both will offer sliding scale fees. No family should have to choose between paying rent and saving their dog. Construction starts in the spring. I kept the Charleston single house on Trad Street, the one where Grandma told me about the trust fund in her garden. I moved in. I listed the Kiowa Beach house for sale. It sold in March for $550,000. I also established the Ella Laner Brady Memorial Fund, $150,000 endowment. Annual scholarships for veterinary students from families who can't or won't support them. The application requires an essay. Prompt: describe a time you were called the other one and explain how it shaped your path to veterinary medicine. The fund launched in late February. The first scholarship will be awarded next fall. If you've ever been called the other one or had families steal your opportunities, drop the word receipts in the comments below. I see you. I read every single one. It's late February now. 2 weeks since they paid. 2 weeks since I walked out of that house for the last time. Beth sends me texts now. Small things. A patient update. A question about one of her colleagues' dogs. We're not close. Maybe we never will be again, but we're trying. I don't talk to my parents anymore. I don't hate them. I don't forgive them. I've simply moved on to a life where they're irrelevant. That's the real inheritance. The freedom to walk away from people who only valued you when you stayed small. Beth sends me pictures sometimes. Kids who beat cancer. Families celebrating remission. I send her pictures of the dogs and cats I save. The families who cry with relief when I tell them their pet will be okay. We're both doctors. We both heal. She just had an easier path to hers. Grandma left me $2.6 million. But the real gift was the letter, the proof that someone saw, someone kept score. Someone loved me enough to spend their final years making sure the truth didn't die with them. I think about that garden conversation a lot. March 15th, 2008, my 18th birthday. Wisteria blooming. Grandma holding my hands. Promise me you'll use it for something that makes you happy, not something that makes them proud. I'm keeping that promise now. I'm a veterinarian. I own my own practice. I'm expanding to serve families who need help. I work with animals because I love it, because I'm good at it, because it makes me happy, not because it made them proud. They called her our doctor. They called me the other one. They stole the money. They stole the opportunity. but they could never steal who I was. I became a doctor anyway, just not the kind they wanted. And that in the end was the greatest inheritance of all. If your family ever made you feel like the other one, tell me your story in the comments. What would you have done if you discovered what I discovered? Drop receipts or the other one below. I read every single comment.